we are calling upon Dr. Justin Chinobrekwe to the stage to do the conference opening. Thank you so much. Dr. Justin, welcome to the stage.
Thank you so much. At this moment in time, may I ask us to rise for the anthem. Audit and Development, Professor Prof. Mavima. May I ask the audience to put a round of applause? We were also expecting His Worship the Mayor of the city of Harare, Councillor Ian Makone. There was an issue at our Morton Jeffrey plant, so he just came in to give his excuse and he had to rush to Morton Jeffrey. We appreciate the support, but we have a team from the city of Harare here with us, with the mayor. And the Honorable Minister, we are humbled to have you grace this occasion. As an organization of international practitioners and scholars, we are committed to real transformation. We engage in conversations that foster individual, organizational, and societal transformation. That's at the heart of everyone you see in the room and the colleagues who are joining us online from all over the world. I take this opportunity to introduce you, Honorable Minister, to the team that we have here. And allow me to highlight that we are an organization that is focused on rebranding Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe has a lot of negative hyphens in the international community, and as an organization, we really take rebranding the brand Zimbabwe seriously. Hence, we work with international practitioners who are really concerned with transformation. With us in the room and sitting next to you is Mercedes Martin, who came with a team from the United States, specifically for this conference, because of the passion that they have for real transformation, not only in Zimbabwe, but across the African continent and globally. And the team with Mercedes is coming from South Africa. We have Stephen sitting in that corner. He's coming from South Africa. And we have the two gentlemen sitting on the other table here coming from the US. We also have next to you, Madam Preeti D'Souza from India. It's her first time in Africa, and I believe we've welcomed her well in the country. And we also have Madam Nonhlanhla Dlamini from Eswatini, a former member of parliament in Eswatini, and she works with women organizations, and she's supporting us in this engagement. We have a colleague from South Africa working with the South African government, local authorities, also here to support the work that we do. We also have the organizations that are represented here, the National Employment Council, tourism and hospitality industry. We have organizations like TIB Insurance represented here, all supporting the work that we do, and a number of other international organizations that are supporting the work that we do. This is the audience that we have with us physically and online attending this conference. Our focus is on rewiring leadership mindsets, and the conversations we are having here are tuned to that. And before I ask you to come to the podium, we have Madam Preeti from India. She said, I have a present for the minister, and I want to address the Honorable Minister. So I will ask you, my apologies, if you can come to the front, and Madam Preeti from India will dress you with an Indian regalia. Then you can take it.
Let me start by thanking Doc for that introduction. Let me just go ahead and greet everyone who is here. There are guys that I worked with before, who are here. I'm glad that Lucy was here talking about NBS, which is an organization that I'm very familiar with. And indeed, I'm happy to be here. My only disappointment is that you are talking about rewiring the leadership mindset and heart set. And the majority of you are practitioners who are networked already. And the people who are supposed to take our society somewhere, not here, who are supposed to be the audience, especially at the national level, to hear some of the things that you're going to talk about, or that you continue to discuss here. But I also want to just say, to me, this is very important. It is at the center of everything. Whether a country does well or not, because I'm going to talk about the nation, the country, the society, also, and not necessarily about individual organizations or about individuals. I am more concerned about Zimbabwe as a nation, as a society. And to me, whether a country does well or not depends on the mindset of the leaders, and indeed the heart set of the leaders. Maybe the foundation is the heart set, and then followed by the mindset. I believe that the heart set can make mindset change easier, especially if at the national level we can wait an accident. If you have the accident, you can move the leadership in the right headset. Everything is likely to fall we have seen it happen countless times in many different countries. We saw it happen in South Korea after the war, when General Park took over and decided that he was going to end poverty in South Korea. We saw it happen in China after the ascendance of Deng Xiaoping, and he decided that he was going to change and reorient China towards productivity, towards excellence in everything, and providing incentives to the lowest levels so that people could be productive. And this is happening in the late 1970s. And as we speak, China is knocking on the door of being the biggest economy in the world, and a global political as well as military power, challenging Pax Americana. We are going to see Pax side very soon. It happened in Singapore thanks to the leadership of Lee Kuan Yew, a small harbor used mainly as a transit point by the British Empire, hardly developed at all. And soon after, they were cut off from the rest of the Malay Peninsula and remained as a small city-state. But it has become one of the most advanced countries in the world today, generally serving as a hub, a regional hub, for a lot of international companies who do business within that region. And again, started off with a mindset that came from the heartset of Lee Kuan Yew. We are beginning to see tremendous progress in Africa. And when I speak of African countries, I am a little bit more cautious because of the capriciousness of our political environment, and the fact that what we consider to be very good, well-performing countries today, sometimes you wake up the following morning and things have changed because of the security situation. But Rwanda is a very good example of some of the good work that is taking place in Africa. Again, a clear mindset which has been collected everywhere in Rwanda. Every government department that I go to is on the same standard, same well-being. So they are doing extremely well. Lucy, I agree with you, and I hope Zimbabweans can also agree that given the accident that I referred to, the accident of leadership with the appropriate heart-set and mindset, democracy might not be necessary. All these guys that I have referred to, including Paul Kagame, are not advocates for democracy. advocates for national development, very guided national development, guided by a set of values and principles that they believe in, and to which they are really, really, really committed to see through. And they live, they breathe, they sleep, they are immersed in these principles. They are always doing things that are aligned to that value set. And that's what gives them the values. I mean, the values give them the objectives, the targets, the programs that they then implement. And they make sure, difficult as it is, they make sure that they pull everyone together, the nation together with them to where they want to go. Consistent communication of these values and the vision over and over and over and over again. Morning, afternoon, evening, until it becomes a way of life for a nation. And I guess even within organizations, that's the same thing, that's the same process that you have to go through in order to achieve the change that you want to achieve. Lucy, I also think that you will be surprised. In a nation like Zimbabwe right now, if I claim that I have talked to God this morning and I give that message to people, they are likely to agree to it and accept it. I have actually seen quite a number of even charlatans who claim to have spoken to God, and they bring a lot of people following to themselves. You know, I think I'll start a crusade for national change based on a voice that has come from the Almighty. But this thing that I'm talking about really requires that we are crusaders, especially at the national level. We have to be crusaders. So thank you for inviting me to be part of this important occasion. I would prefer that next time you aggressively look for ministers and permanent secretaries in government, chief to attend, as well as the heads of our parastatal institutions, because to a very large extent they are the ones who drive the economy of this country, and they are the area to a very large extent that has led this nation down. Because these people that I'm talking about below the minister are professionals like you, are technocrats. Those who head parastatals are also professionals in their own rights. But if you look at most of our parastatals, you place one parastatal here that is operating in the same sector as a private sector company here, and you see like a world of difference in terms of the culture that we're talking about, but also in terms of day-to-day performance. And then you look at the training and competencies of the people who had, and you realize that MBA, maybe in the same field, or doctorate, in the same field, here and here. But here, very mediocre performance. And here, stellar performance. No, I don't want to mention the names of these institutions, but they're there. I'm actually glad that NBS is now seeing itself as a business. and not just a parastatal. You know, the moment you see yourself as a parastatal, it's almost like we wait for Treasury to rescue us when we mess up. So you set yourself up to mess up. And then Treasury can come. Mindset, heart set is important. So, what are the imperatives for Zimbabwe? Development. What are the imperatives for Zimbabwe to achieve Agenda 2030, which is basically a global agenda, but aligned to our own Vision 2030. The global agenda for SDGs is the Agenda 2030 that I'm talking about, which is aligned to our Vision 2030. What is Zimbabwe? It's imperative to achieve that Vision 2030 through NDS 1 and NDS 2. And what is Zimbabwe? What are the imperatives of Zimbabwe to contribute effectively to Agenda 2063, which is the industrialization agenda for Africa? I will say, when everything is said and done, the topmost imperative for Zimbabwe to achieve all this is leadership, and leadership, and leadership. Everything else is there in this country. Everything else is there. The topmost imperative is leadership. Everything else is there. We compete with DRC in terms of per capita resource endowment. We are the best in the world. We are only in competition with DRC. Look at Zimbabwe. If I start digging here on this ground, if I persist, I will get gold here. The whole of Harare is red soils, which is an indication that there is gold. Let's forget about that. If I have water and start farming here, I can get a yield of 10 to 15 tons of maize here. Right now, everywhere you go in Zimbabwe, there are lithium deposits. Everywhere you go. We have the highest deposit of lithium in Africa. And maybe the second or third highest deposit of lithium in the world. And lithium is the way of the future as far as energy is concerned. Automobiles, you know, storage of solar energy. Abundance of methane gas, which can be tapped to produce enough energy to power Africa, or the entire continent of Africa. So natural resources are there. Human capital is there in Zimbabwe. Zimbabwe is proud to be the most educated country in Africa, even though the criterion we use to describe that is not the most appropriate. We use literacy, literacy in terms of just being able to read and write. Right now, we need to expand that educational capacity to where we are talking of competencies, and whether we have, even though we can read and write, do we have better competencies than Kenya, for example? Do we have better competencies than South Africa? Do we have better competencies than a lot of other countries? And can we sustain national development with those competencies? And I'm happy that now that has become my mandate, to find out whether Zimbabwe has the necessary competencies to take it to a higher level in terms of where we want to go in the achievement of the Zimbabwe dream. So we have the human capital. But I have to put a caveat there. It is a human capital that we should be able to keep in this country. It is a human capital that we have to always evaluate in terms of the skill sets, in terms of the motivation. Makazara government. You know, the appetite in Zimbabwe for getting degrees is just amazing. Makazara vanema masters, vanema PhD. But to be honest with you, I'm not happy with the level of utilization of that educational qualification. It has been mediocre. It needs to have, again, the mindset and the heartset that says, I have this tool. You remember Mandela? I have this tool that I can use to change the world. And then I have to go out and do that which will change the world. Hence the motivation. They are human resource practitioners. You know, in your field, performance is the result of the skill and experience and the motivation. When these two come together, then you have performance. You have some very bright people who become just idle and not produce. Because you know, worse, some then get into some addictions that even get them completely useless. So we have the human capital in this country, which could be used to make sure that we achieve the developments that we need. But we have to prepare them, motivate them, make sure that the environment is such that the skills that they have gotten can be utilized. We have to seriously think in terms of how do we stop the brain drain. I will tell you that upwards of 70% of the medical personnel or human capital that we have developed as an independent nation has left the country and is working elsewhere. Therefore, we have not reached the optimal levels of doctors a certain number of population, nurses a certain number of population. We have not been able to do that because we have lost a lot of the human capital to countries that have had the pull factor. So we have to find ways of retaining that human capital in this country. Leadership will make sure that we have the resources that are needed in order to do that. Leadership will make sure that we have programs for continuously improving on the conditions of work of the human capital that we have generated as Zimbabwe. The Africa Continental Free Trade Area is an opportunity that we as a country should take advantage of. Unfortunately, for this opportunity to work, Africa needs to collectively share the mindset. It's not enough to institute formal fora like the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. It's not enough to have even the regional frameworks like SADC, ECOWAS, and the Eastern African Community. It's not enough. Beyond the formal institutions, there has to be continental activity that push towards the realization of that dream of an Africa that can trade amongst its members. Right now, we are not geared towards the full implementation of that pact. We are not. Most of the time, if I want to go to Nigeria, I have to go to Europe. So Africa is not interlinked. If I want to go to Morocco, I have to go to France first. And it takes me 2 days. 2 days going, 2 days coming back, 4 days for a meeting that takes only 1 day. Imagine the time that is wasted. We have seen the demise of SAA, almost near demise of SAA. And therefore, even within, because the SAA used to cover Southern Africa as well as go into West Africa and other places. So I could hop to Joburg, and next I am on a flight to Accra, Ghana, and some other places. Because I'm going to straight. You know what somewhere church. You went to Addis through Ethiopia. You know what in the world church. So I will lose 2 days. So Africa is not interconnected. Africa is not interconnected also culturally. We have to push for the cultural interconnection of Africa. One of the things that we have to do is let's have a lingua franca of Africa. And attack Swahili, let's teach Swahili everywhere so that Africa can communicate amongst itself. Canada is Gatichita move towards a unique currency for Africa. Why can't we have our own version of the euro, an African currency that allows us to trade easily amongst ourselves? Why don't we open borders? South Africa inotyke kuti ma-Nigerians kana kuti ma-Zimbabweans apindemo. Isu veZimbabwe totyke kuti mamwe ma-nationalities, African nationalities come to Zimbabwe. Remember, we are saying $1.3 billion. I mean, 1.3 billion people, population of Africa. Largely young, 65% of it youths of 35 or less. And we talk about demographic dividends. Africa is going to benefit from the demographic dividend. But not only among themselves, who cannot communicate? Francophone Africa, Anglophone Africa, Lusophone Africa can't communicate. And how do you take advantage of this demographic dividend? This demographic dividend, yatrikurega ichienda vamwachinofira madeserts nemuningo seas, trying to get to Europe. Those at the prime of their lives are actually leaving Africa to go and serve the aging populations of the north. And we talk of demographic dividend. Maybe we're talking about the remittances that they will bring back. But we want the skills, we want the energy here in Africa in order to take Africa to the next level. An imperative for the development of Zimbabwe, and indeed for the development of Africa as a whole, is making sure that we tap into that demography. We need to do that. And for that to happen, again, we come back to issues of competencies, building competencies. These people have to be educated. These people have to have good health care. This is how they can contribute to the development of Africa. And the leadership of this continent needs to understand that, so that this continent can move forward. It is what we have to do. So, Zimbabwe, we need to be clear about what we can contribute to the Africa, within the context of the African continental free trade area. We can start small. And we can start by saying, what is our niche? What are the niche areas? Ndabokuudza kuti pese pawatarisa munyika muno unogona kutatena around this country nezvinenge zviripo. West Africa varimi, they have good climates, all year round rainfall, good soils. But if you go to Cote d'Ivoire, they almost import everything that they eat, including goats, plantain, and other things like that. If you go to DRC, money, hard currency is flowing everywhere. But they import everything, vegetables, chickens, eggs. Here is an opportunity for us to push. It's not going to be easy, by the way. The eggs that come from Harare are going to be more preferable from the eggs that come from Paris in DRC. Because of those linkages that were there before. So it's going to be really a struggle. Hence the change of the mindset. But beyond that, South Africa, Zimbabwe can be centers for the development of supplies that are needed in the mining sector everywhere in Africa. Remember, Zimbabwe used to be the highest industrialized country per capita, even better than South Africa. And we can still tap into that, but I'm saying South Africa and us can collaborate, work together to develop an industry that can supply all the mining equipment needed in Africa. And let's use this fora to do that. That's a niche area that we can do. Agricultural implements, South Africa and Zimbabwe can also do this. Why don't we become the center of excellence in Africa as far as the lithium value chain is concerned and establish a niche there? That's an opportunity that we have. It only requires the heart set and the mindset, especially among leaders. In roads you are almost like voices in a desert. The lamentations of people who are talking to themselves, converted already, but as regards Siri, that my permanent secretary is the market. Ndinokuenda ndichiwana nevamwaki ndinotovaziva nemazita anafiyo nana request Machivira. Nana over budget. But you open a message, highly motivated lot. But where is it getting to? Those who matter are not there in the audience. Those who matter are not there, available for coaching. I'm going to do film. I'm going to do a strategic planning session for my new ministry in early November. I want you to help me to bring representatives of all these crusader organizations to that meeting. It's not going to be a government thing this time. I'm going to make sure that every stakeholder who matters as far as developing our skills for Zimbabwe is part of that. So that we begin to make a difference. Are there people from the University of Zimbabwe here? From HIT? From Women's University? Who is from a ministry here? Who is from a parastatal? No, it's an honor, so I can do this. Okay. So these interchanges, this message that you give about culture change, you know, to make culture change, you know, to development of government, you want to, in any ministry. Yeah? And the other agenda will organize. If you are just doing it, you need me as a private sector, talking amongst yourselves. Let's do even lunch meetings. Where I grew up at, you know, she comes from the state of Florida. I lived in Florida for 6 years. I was in the northern part of Florida, which almost is like southern USA with all its idiosyncrasies. And she's from the more cosmopolitan Miami. But there is a culture there of interactions between academic institutions, government institutions, the private sector. There is a culture of always sharing ideas. There is something that they call the round big lunch, where people just say over lunch they coalesce and start talking about issues of importance to their organizations, and they bring experts, small presentations, and they exchange ideas. I've never seen it in Zimbabwe. I have tried to do it, but you know, change requires a lot of effort. Even in your organizations, just do it, casual talk over lunch, where you are sharing what's those ideas over a lunch that you have brought in. Then you will realize that it's very, very enriching. If we are not careful, we will lose the impetus to achieve Agenda 2063, which is the industrialization of Africa, because it's going to be easy. Easier get products from India and China than to make them here. Economically, right now it's cheaper to just buy clothing from Turkey and China than to start to revive the textile industry here in the country. It requires a lot of investment in innovation and a lot of willpower to develop production systems that will compete effectively with Turkey and China. You will be surprised to find anything that is made in this country. But this country was leading in the textile industry. And South Africa was always complaining of Zimbabwe dumping their textiles in South Africa. But now we don't produce anything. We're actually making clothing for some of the biggest brands in the world. Banana Republic, Gap, and the like. Chitubiza. But we have lost that competitive advantage. To regain it, we need to apply our mindsets and really have a motivation to say, now we are going to come up with production systems that can compete with the international best producers. So, again, I go back. Zimbabwe has everything that is required for it to achieve these aspirations. But what is required, first and foremost, is a broad-based leadership program that changes the mindsets of those who matter as far as delivery of the national agenda is concerned. So how do we rewire the nation? I think it takes about 5 years of consistent pushing, articulation of an idea, of a vision, stating the expectations for everyone within the nation. The president has to stand every day and say, this is our direction, the people of Zimbabwe. This is where we will get if we follow this direction. And these are the rewards that you will earn. And those who do human resources, performance is what? Ultimately is a function of what? Human behavior, but what drives the human behavior? Expectancy theory says what? Expectancy theory says what? Those in human resources management. There has to be delivery of that which is expected. When they choose to be in government, when we train them in our universities, there are certain expectations that they have. As individuals, expectations that are driven by their individual interests. If we want them to perform, tofanira kuti izvozvo zvavanoexpecta zvive realized. Then they will perform. Someone who has gotten a degree at the University of Zimbabwe or some other university and has come to work in government, the expectation is that I will have a higher standard of living than the ordinary person. I will earn enough to support that higher standard of living. I will send my children to school, to give them decent education. They will have good shelter. They will have health care coverage and other things like that. If you then, you are a manager, you come with Chamboko and say people perform, you have firmer ground to stand on if you are providing to the satisfaction of their interests. You can also say, given what I'm giving you and your level of performance, I don't think I can continue with you. And you will be on firm ground if you do that. We can never have the realization of these national aspirations on people that only contribute because it can be a volunteer kind of thing. It can be Salvation Army. It cannot be. We go to Salvation Army because we have spare time to contribute there. It's where we say, I am committed to providing some social capital. I will do that. But for matters that define your livelihood as a person, there has to be commensurate remuneration for you to perform optimally. This is the aspect, and as a country we have to retain skills, we have to come up with frameworks that will retain skills. The reason why most of our doctors have left the country is because the environment is not good enough to cater to their expectations of a life. It's simple and straightforward. But we need, as leaders in government, we need to consider that. So there's a need for cross-cutting mindset reorientation. And I said it will take about 5 years if we are all committed to it. And then we'll create a critical mass that can move this country forward. And we can create situations like the one that I was referring to in Rwanda. Everywhere you go in ministries, the ambience there is saying we are going to do serious work here. Everywhere you go, you can actually see an orientation towards serving the citizens of that country. Everywhere you go, you can see concern. You can see cleanliness. You can see a commitment to excellence. We have to create that mindset. And we have a critical mass of leadership, managers who are pushing the same agenda. That's how we can get to where we want to go as a nation. And I'm actually asking you to help me identify these cross-cutting orientations that we should impart in our people in Zimbabwe in order to move the country country to the next stage. Tinopedza nguva sometimes tichiita bogged down with the polarity in politics. And then we lose sight of where we want to go as a nation. Democracy is to go to die a benevolent dictator. Benevolent dictator is what I want. Move the country forward. Luxury, democracy. Can I have a democracy in America? It's a straight-jacketed system. They wanted an emperor, actually. They wanted Washington to be an emperor. The good thing about Washington, they said, understood, I don't want to be an emperor. And I will save and go. And then after that, everyone saved and went. Even though it was not written in their constitution, they continued to do that. Save and go, save and go, save and go, save and go. Until FDR continued. And that's when they decided, if we are not careful, someone will save for life. Let's change the constitution. Then they did the term limit after that. But they built. They started. Those founders. Even though I don't, I criticize them for a lot of things, including the slavery and the racism that existed there. But they had a set of values that they committed to, and they didn't just put formal institutions, but they lived those institutions to a very large extent. And therefore their system has endured over a long period of time. And it's very difficult for someone to want to change it and go against the constitution without the citizens actually, or even those who take it upon themselves to be the defenders of the constitution, standing up and saying, this cannot be done. So we need that a leadership that exudes those values. We need it to be developed to a point where it becomes second nature in our leaders to follow those same values. And so what is your role as practitioners and consultants? The first role is to not continue speaking to yourselves. Let's find a way to bring into the fold the entirety of the nation, to hear these messages, these very clear messages that you are talking about. You need to reach out in a non-flattering manner. Reach out to the leaders of this country. If you want multi-party democracy, reach out as much to the ruling elite as to the opposition elite. Because I don't have trade money. Isu Canada zopinda tinowaziva tinogara navo. Well, they say you may not know it. We interact much more than you think. And nyaya kana dzotaurwa subconscious The subconscious mind kana yakubuda yakafanana. And so this shift is required in the leadership of the nation without looking at parties. It's everyone. And let's reach out to everyone so that we are developing the leadership model that we want. You have all the resources that you need. You have amongst yourselves coaches of coaches. You are already, like I said before, already converted. But broaden the base. Broaden the base. Go and fish. Be fishers of leaders. So that we can change the mindset and the heartset of this nation. Be clear in your articulation of the errors of our ways as leaders. Emphasize the issue of making sure that we grow the national cake. And once the national cake is grown, to know who that is. Kapeta.
Thank you, Honorable